welcome to Remotely. I'm Jack Neff, editor-at-large of Ad Age, and I have with me here today Krishan Bhatia, President and Chief Business Officer of NBCUniversal. NBCU is fresh off a quarter where, unlike a lot of companies in media, its ad revenues came in a bit ahead of expectations. And he's fresh off a one platform event yesterday where he talked about the many investments NBCU is making in its tech stack and measurement. So there's a lot to talk about. And so, Krishan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Ad Age, for having me.
Sure. I thought I'd start off with just the results, the revenues, which are always good to have. A lot of media companies, including some of those heretofore unstoppable digital titans, disappointed on ad revenue last quarter, but NBCU didn't disappoint. Why is that?
Well, I'm glad you point that out. I think, from our perspective, we've been investing in our advertising business for many years. We actually came to market with our one platform offering, Jack, now 3 years ago at the beginning of 2020, to basically make the increasingly distributed and fragmented consumer world a lot more seamless for our marketers to activate against. If you think about where content is consumed these days, premium video content in particular, it ranges from linear television on both broadcast and cable to streaming to partnership platforms where we distribute our content, including YouTube, for example, where I know this live stream is happening. And that creates an enormous amount of complexity for advertisers to manage. So we launched and developed one platform with that in mind. How do we make it as simple as possible for marketers of all shapes and sizes and forms to travel along our content into all of these platforms? We've been investing for longer than others. Many are catching up, I think, to the realities of making that complexity easier for their marketers. And the longer you've been at it, the more scale benefits you get from it. And as a result, it reflects in your growth and in your revenue generation as well. I think the second thing is that, we're increasingly diversifying the advertiser base that historically has been a relatively small base of global brand marketers that were able to associate themselves with television content. And we're now seeing a huge opportunity to grow into performance marketers, e-commerce brands, direct-to-consumer brands, small and medium-sized businesses. We've integrated our local ad sales business within NBCUniversal. And so all of those advertisers now have the opportunity to participate in television because of the digitization and the automation that comes along as video transitions to a digitally distributed world, driven and fueled by streaming. So our investments, many of which you might have heard about yesterday in terms of the new capabilities and advancements, are very much focused on how do we make it easier, not just for large marketers, but for marketers of all shapes and sizes to integrate and run alongside our premium content. Self-service capabilities, programmatic integrations, performance marketing platforms, attribution measurement. Those are just a few to name that are important for marketers that measure their performance in a different way than perhaps a brand marketer would. And we think that's a huge opportunity for us as a business, and we're seeing that, in our numbers today already.
How are you thinking about the current state of the economy? I know from talking with marketers, there are a lot of folks doing contingency planning around the possibility of a recession. And so more of them want to keep their options more fluid, more open, perhaps, than in the past. Does that affect the business right now?
Well, I don't think any business is, insulated from global macroeconomic trends. But to refer back to, our prior dialogue here, I think the best thing we can do is, in a time where there's going to be an impact on the marketing and advertising ecosystem, we want to be in a position of strength, and we want to be better than the next best alternative for many of the marketers and marketing segments that I just discussed. And we believe we are. And as a result, even in a market that has headwinds, you're able to shift share, right? Because marketers are looking for a better way, a smarter way, and a more effective way to deploy their marketing dollars, even if they're reducing spend. So we actually look at the next, call it 12 to 18 months, as an opportunity to shift share, increasingly actually from platforms that many of these advertisers that I've mentioned have become accustomed to the simplicity and the scale and the data and the attribution. In other words, if you have primarily been in search advertising or social media or other forms of performance marketing, CTV and television now are actually an alternative that we believe can increase scale and effectiveness and make a meaningful impact on your business. So even as we're going into a global macroeconomy that faces a lot of headwinds, we believe there's lots of opportunity because of the investments that we've been making for many years to serve and shift share within that ecosystem.
So it sounds like the investments that you've made in one platform and the tech stack and measurement are something that actually positions you to respond better as things change, if things do change, in all that contingency planning that people are talking about.
Correct, and I think it both fuels your core business in terms of marketing partnerships that are multi-year partnerships with many of the leading global brands, which we're also increasingly diversifying in terms of our global offerings. We announced yesterday, for example, that through our NBCUniversal platforms, as well as the partners that we have globally, we now reach 1 billion consumers every month across the globe. And marketers are looking for scaled solutions as well. So when they're launching new products or when they're rolling out a global marketing campaign, they're looking for platforms that can help them do that in a scalable fashion in multiple global economies. We now have the ability to do that both through NBCUniversal, through our partners at Sky Media in Europe, through our networks that are distributed across the globe in Asia and Latin America and Africa, and now increasingly through a network of global partnerships that allow you to activate against that scale. So all of those solutions, both fuel your core business and then also allow you to serve a much larger part of the global advertising economy.
NBCU, at least in the VAB surveying, which while it was anonymous, you can kind of read some of the tea leaves, I think did more upfront deals on non-Nielsen currency than anybody else. I think 40% was the number for you, and that was at the top of the range that they found, certainly. Why is that?
Well, again, I'm sorry to keep going back to the same theme, but we've had an outlook and a vision for where we believe the future of advertising, particularly in the video ecosystem, is going. So we started laying the foundation really in earnest about 6 years ago. In 2016, we started to build our first capabilities that made television smarter, both in terms of dimensionalizing audiences in more diverse ways than purely age and gender, as you just referenced. We built our first suite of advanced audience tools back in 2016 that allowed you to take CRM data from marketers, third-party data, as well as first-party data that we originally secured from Comcast through their set-top boxes. And we were able to build plans, going back 6 years, that matched audiences at scale between who a marketer is looking to reach and where those consumers are across the one platform portfolio that NBCUniversal represents. That business has grown steadily. It's a massive business for us. At this point, we see it growing at factors of 30 to 40% a year. And as a result, none of that is fueled by age gender, right? So as that has become, as that sort of moved into the core of our business, and then coupled with the transition, Jack, of moving into streaming, particularly through the launch of Peacock about 2.5 years ago now, both of those ways of activating marketing campaigns across our portfolio are inherently not based on traditional age gender demographics. So because of those trends, fast forward a few years, we're now able, to represent our entire portfolio to the tune of, you just said, we announced 40% of our upfront deals were written on non-traditional age gender demographics. We believe that that's only going to accelerate as we go into next year.
It sounds like from yesterday's announcements that you've got several advertisers on board to expand their use of multiple currencies for the next upfront. Is that a pretty good indicator that they're satisfied with what they've gotten so far from using different alternatives?
Yeah, so thank you. So we really wanted to manage this transition to what we call a multi-currency future in partnership with our partners, in this case with both marketers as well as our agency partners, and actually increasingly the broader ecosystem. So last year, and we just had the anniversary of this forum, we initiated something we call the Measurement Innovation Forum. It invites leading brand marketers, agency partners, industry associations, measurement companies, buy-side platforms to join us in driving innovation basically in the measurement space and creating these currency alternatives that we believe are going to continue to scale year over year. We did a massive test and learn with 100 plus advertisers at the beginning of this year to really embed them in the benefits of what we believe new currency providers can bring to the table in terms of speed, accuracy, cross-platform reach and frequency measurement. And out of that, we have now built momentum towards new currency options that we're formalizing in what you just referred to as the Currency Council. Yesterday, we announced that we have over 10 leading brand marketers, including General Motors, Marriott, Pepsi, State Farm, T-Mobile, Wayfair, and many others, participating actively in this forum to now say, okay, we've tested and learned. We know what some of these alternatives are. NBCUniversal is certifying them. Buy-side and other programmers are working with many of the same players. How do we actually now execute on that as we go into the upfront marketplace? We will be certifying more currency players over the next few months. We talked about unveiling those at our industry event 123, which we also announced will be held on February 16th. So stay tuned for more information there. But we're really trying to bring the industry and the entire kind of advertising ecosystem along for this ride. We learned from other forums that have been very productive. Just to give you an example, when we launched Peacock originally, we launched it with a select number of brands for lots of different reasons. We also formed something we called the Peacock Streaming Council to then work with those brands who were making multi-million-dollar commitments to us to say, what are we learning as consumers are transitioning to streaming in terms of their receptivity and engagement with new ad formats, with reduced ad loads, with the Prime Pod format, Jack, that we have where our promise is no more than 1 minute of ads per break. And where do they as marketers derive most of the value and what do they want us to double down on? We launched a suite of 10 ad products over that first period of time. And we wanted to really lean into them and say, okay, which ones of these are working for you that you want us to continue to double down on? Which ones of these, did we experiment with but may not make the cut for the future? And that forum has given us incredible insight into how leading marketers are thinking about reaching audiences in premium content and what that means for our roadmap and development of all of these formats. We want to do the same thing in measurement, basically. So that was around ad formats, ad innovations. Now we're doing the same thing in measurement and currencies. And I think bringing partners to the table, like everything else in life right now, to have a conversation that's meaningful and informed by data, and then jointly agree that this is the plan we're going to go towards, is a much better way of executing than trying to do things in a black box and sort of unveil them magically to the industry. We have a very transparent approach to driving innovation. And that's no different in terms of the measurement and currency environment.
I understand from having tried that it can be difficult to see or publish side-by-side comparisons of Nielsen ratings to other audience measurement formats. And I'm told that one reason for that is that there are actual contractual restrictions against any Nielsen customer publishing its data alongside that of an alternative source. However, that being the case, Amazon Prime recently has been allowed to publish its alternative audience numbers alongside Nielsen for Thursday Night Football, which they've been doing. And seemingly it's based on fairly solid data, which would be Amazon server logs combined with some unnamed third-party input. But bottom line is people are seeing, at least one major program compare its numbers every week. And I was wondering, as the market sees that, do you think it's opening people's thinking to the possibility that Nielsen may be systematically undercounting audiences for TV programmers?
Well, it's such a great question, Jack. I'll let you ask Nielsen and Amazon about the specific situation you just mentioned. But you're right, that's out there, and we're all seeing that, and we're seeing the comparability, obviously, that you mentioned. So I'll say this: companies of scale that have access to first-party data, that includes NBCUniversal, have the most immediate and we believe the most accurate accounting of who's watching what when. We invested in something we call NBC Unified starting last year, which is basically our enterprise-wide identity platform. It now has over 200 million IDs across all of NBC Universal's touch points, which ranges from both ad-supported media on television and streaming and our digital platforms, all the way to our theme park businesses, our Fandango business, where you can buy movie tickets and obviously look at showtimes, et cetera. Every direct-to-consumer interaction we as a company have tells us something about those consumers. We've built a platform that is both privacy compliant and anonymizes that data, but it does have 200 million IDs across our portfolio. And we believe and have said that identity becomes really the new currency in the future, because if you have programmers and advertisers that know about their respective either viewers in our case or customers in a marketer's case, and you marry the two, all of which now is facilitated through the advent of new technologies that can be through the forms of clean rooms or even the use of blockchain, enables much higher fidelity of audience matching between buy side and sell side. We talked about our partnership, for example, with General Motors and Cadillac in particular yesterday. We had Melissa Grady, who's the CMO, global CMO for Cadillac, for basically a case study on how they are thinking about marketing in the future and the importance of identity on their side, and on the programmer side. It's just one example. We have like multiples of that in the pipeline right now. So third-party measurement, might be relegated to verification when first-party data is really we believe, the core of currency. And of course, we're going to be sharing that information both with clients and with agency partners, and potentially publicly. No one can prevent us from talking about our own data, obviously. And we believe, with those investments and our insights into our audiences, that really ought to be the basis for how we conduct business and serve clients.
What do you make of the recent announcement that Nielsen's accreditation suspension will continue?
Well, again, I go back to preparing for a future that we believe is not going to be monolithic and will inherently have multiple currency options, ranging from identity, as I just mentioned, to third-party options as well. We've been on that journey for a while because we knew inherently that the current way of measurement in the television ecosystem was already to extent broken and continues to break as we transition from a broadcast model to a streaming model that inherently has to take into account more census-based measurement and not just rely on outdated panel measurement. So I can't say that it's a surprise. I think it is further evidence that, well, apparently there is some progress. It is not enough to actually hold up to the industry's standards, which only gives us more fuel to invest in these alternatives. Nielsen itself obviously is aware of that and is aiming to roll out a new measurement approach and new currency, many details of which remain to be seen and evaluated by the broader industry. So, we're going to continue to double down in all the alternatives that we have. We believe we are more than ready, and we now have clients and agencies starting to get ready as well, and that's going to move the needle significantly from that 40% that we talked at the outset as we go into the next upfront marketplace.
The effort that Kelly Abkarian has undertaken to catalog and evaluate the whole measurement universe is quite ambitious. I'm not aware of anything else quite like it previously, and it's really very much open source. I mean, anybody who wants to read the lookbook can pretty much see what was discovered. But there are always going to be skeptics who, are going to say it's led by the sell side, a particular company on the sell side, and so they're going to have some suspicions because of that. But I guess one question is, does the currency council that was discussed yesterday with participation from agencies and brand marketers, is that something that starts to address that skepticism?
Thank you for that question, Jack. I think you almost answered it yourself there, which is we started from a position of someone has to lead. I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago that you may have picked up that talked about, let's take stock of all the progress we've actually made as an industry, not just NBCUniversal, and stop admiring the problems, plenty of which exist. I mean, there's no question that there are challenges and problems that need to be solved for, but there's also an enormous amount of progress. And so what Kelly set out to do with her team was to sort of take stock of what are all the alternatives and innovations that already exist in the measurement ecosystem. Let's have a formalized call to action where we're going to invest our leadership time and our resources to sort through that. You mentioned sort of our lookbook. We have 7 measurement categories that we laid out. We put all of the companies that have raised their hand, of which we've had more than 150 since we've called to action, categorized them, and now we're going through the process of who do we believe can actually help us advance this journey through our certified measurement program. We did that very openly, very transparently. We shared that with the industry, really anyone, buy side, sell side, trade associations, et cetera. And I think the industry will hopefully, verify that. The Currency Council is the same thing. It's NBCUniversal's calling to action, but the Currency Council is constituted by brand marketers, many of which I just mentioned to you, who we believe have the same incentive, if not more, to drive a more accurate way of measuring as well. Because guess what? By inaccurately measuring, you are likely going to also value media in a way that is out of whack with the underlying value. And so we've got to start from a point of accuracy, both on the buy side and the sell side. So it's very much an open approach. And we believe now with everyone who's joining that council, and there will be more, we're going to make even more progress as we head into next year.
You mentioned up top, I think, the expansion of the advertiser base, which I feel like is in part a function of the migration of audiences to CTV and the possibilities there. Yep. I was just wondering, as you see migration of audiences and dollars to CTV, how does that change the whole upfront environment and the whole marketplace, really?
Lots of people have called, the upfront to be over for many years. And I think year over year, we've seen that it has and remains to have a place for a certain set of advertisers and for a certain set of media offerings. I think the upfront will continue to play a very meaningful role, because guess what? That's the only way to assure yourself that your marketing campaigns are actually going to be associated with premium content in the way that best matches sort of your needs. At the same time, to your point, the democratization of television advertising driven by streaming is going to let a lot more advertisers participate in that. And they may not have to, nor may they want to, nor may it serve their businesses to participate in an upfront marketplace. They might be buying programmatic through a PMP. They might want to buy through a self-service platform. They might want to use a performance marketing platform to measure the contribution of our media in a different way. And we're open to all of those ways of conducting business. Just to give you a couple of stats, in our core television business, we generally conduct business with about 1,500 to 2,000 advertisers or so. When you look at one platform overall and include all of our streaming and digital platforms and all of the programmatic integrations that we have, we do business with about 50,000 advertisers. So that alone tells you, and at the end of that tail, there's very small buys and very small advertisers, but there's a huge opportunity, I think we believe, for the TV ecosystem to both stretch out the advertiser ecosystem and then also focus particularly on the mid-tail of that to really create products and value propositions that serve them and ultimately make us a better alternative than many of the other media options that they might face.
Well, thanks a lot. I could keep going. This is a fun conversation, but we're starting to run out of time, and so I'm going to start to wind things down here. Just would like to remind viewers that they can learn more about how brands can build sustainable businesses at the Ad Age Next CMO conference, December 7th in New York. And you can find out more about that at adage.com/CMO. As always, thank you to our Ad Age crew, Lauren Ciardio, Arabella Breck, and Anna Sakula for making this live stream happen. And again, very much thank you to Krishan for being with us, and thank you for watching.